Lucas, I'm really glad that you're back with me for many reasons, but I've been sitting on this piece of Arthur news, and I had to wait until you were back before we dive into it. Are you ready?
Oh, I'm ready. This is a surprise to me, so I'm bracing myself.
So, on the ECL Discord, which is one of the Patreon perks, we have somebody who has boosted the server a couple of times and who has been a very generous patron. That would be RPG Fiend. They recently were at an event that featured Mark Brown and Goosebumps author R.L. Stine in kind of a twin signing and question and answer period. And RPG Fiend revealed that Mark Brown, this is from the author of Arthur, says that there is an Arthur movie in the works.
Whoa.
And it's going to take place with the characters in junior high school.
Okay, now, this piece of news, first of all, you heard it here first on the Elwood City Limits podcast. This is breaking news. Someone get the Frensky Star and Peebs on the phone. But, it begs a bunch of questions. For one, will this be an animated feature? If so, will it be 3D? Will it be 2D? And then finally, will this be a made-for-TV film, or is this going to be, in cinemas?
All good questions. I'm not sure. I would have to imagine they would stick with the style that they have now, but yeah, that's the most that we have right now. And of course, who knows what kind of development that will be facing. I'm sure, sometimes creators announce movies and things change a lot, so do not take this as confirmation that this is 100% happening. But if Mark Brown is saying that freely, then I'd say there's at least smoke to that fire. But yeah, that's RPG Fiend dropping the scoops, and you're hearing it here on Elwood City Limits, the Episodic Arthur podcast. This is Will Young, and Lucas Mancini is my co-host. Lucas, we also have, thankfully, we have a few emails here. I've been letting them build up while you have been away, and now that you're here, we can get into them. I never like to do the emails without you.
I've been missing the people. I've been traveling around for work, and sometimes it gets lonely in these hotel rooms, Will, so it's a pleasure to talk to you, but it's also an even greater pleasure to talk to the people at large. So hit me with these emails.
Let's go over to elwoodcitylimits@gmail.com. I do want to offer a quick apology. One of these emails I actually saved from the spam folder. So if you have been emailing us and haven't been getting any response, I apologize. It may have been going to our spam filter. I will be more diligent about checking that in the future. Otherwise, I might not have gotten this email from Ashley Hollingsworth. Hey, Will and Lucas. Not sure if you got my first email, but I'm a longtime Arthur fan from Chicago. I was so happy when I found your podcast earlier this year because I didn't think there were any other people my age, I'm in my 30s, who genuinely love the show. I was always known as the person who knows way too much about the show among my friends, and I'm so glad to know I'm not alone. There's a great community of folks out there who grew up with the show and still love it, along with new people discovering the show and falling in love with it. Though I'm still pretty far behind on the podcast, I just finished season 5. It has kept me sane this summer, which has been particularly rough due to one bad thing after another happening in my life. Whenever things are stressful, I love tuning in and laughing it up with you guys. It feels like I'm hanging out with my friends. It lets me escape from the stressful things in my life. Quick question. On episode 84, you and my favorite special guest, JV, start talking about the upcoming holidays. It got me thinking about Halloween, which is only a few months away. So, yeah, this email's a bit, like I said, saved from the spam folder. Here, we're already seeing Halloween decorations in stores. Being an avid fan, I don't mind one bit. I'm starting to see more and more people online expressing their disdain at seeing jack-o'-lanterns and skeletons during summer. How do you guys feel about that? Are Halloween decorations already making an appearance over here? Lots of love from Chicago. So, yeah, hard to say now that we're actually in October recording this, but yeah, I think you start to see those here around end of August.
There are already decorations out all over Toronto, at least.
Oh, absolutely, and I'm sure you're seeing a whole bunch of wild displays in the 6.
It's quite terrifying in the 6.
You're running through the 6 with your booze.
Yeah.
No, that's not BOOZE. Yeah, so I want to say, late August, early September is the earliest you see it. And of course, now that we're in Halloween, we're seeing Christmas decorations, which is one of my favorite. If you pay close attention to the memes I put up on the socials, that's one of my favorite things to go to every year. I feel like I've done probably like 5 of those at this point. But thanks for the wait there, Ashley. Sorry about almost flushing your email accidentally down the spam toilet, such as it is. Next one here is from Funith, who got right in under the line. Hey, Will and Lucas, you mentioned about the music episode of Arthur where Binky listens to an avant-garde band, where you brought up the bands that people edit in place of the original music. The one that reminds me of the most of the style of Bang on a Can All-Stars is Pink Floyd, specifically the early years before the mega hit albums, particularly the album Gumma from their early years. It's just as big, beautiful, dark, and scary in many ways. I highly recommend just for the experience of the oddness of it all. By the way, not all kids in America go to school when August ends. The children of coworkers went a few weeks before August ended. Got it. Thank you, Funith. Never really got into Pink Floyd myself. What about you?
I don't know. Well, Pink Floyd was with the kids who smoked a bunch of weed in high school. We're always really into. They loved their, that poster with all the naked girls. You know what I'm talking about? Their poster, with all the girls with their butts out, and it's like all the Pink Floyd covers. Yes. I feel like I've been in many a high school peer's bedroom. And it was always a weed guy who had one of those. Not to say anything negative about Pink Floyd. Pink Floyd's pretty awesome, actually, if you go back. Look, huge shocker, Will. Big surprise. I know I'm taking the really outside kind of anachronistic take here, but Pink Floyd, pretty good music.
Like, actually, kind of good. Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Low-key, it's low-key fire.
And then finally, we have a second email from Ashley Hollingsworth, which came a couple weeks after this one. Hey, Will and Lucas, I've been making my way through the back catalog. Very pleased to hear you name drop my favorite YouTuber, Peanut Butter Gamer, several times. I'm actually one of his Twitch mods. Since you guys are familiar with him, I wanted to recommend his latest Arthur video on controversial Arthur episodes. It's really fun and has some great jokes I think you guys would enjoy. That's actually really cool, Ashley. Hey, I've been trying to get Peanut Butter Gamer on the show for years. If you could, I know you're Twitch mod, I'm sure that you're not necessarily in contact with him, but like, if you could sneak Elwood City Limits into the conversation, and he doesn't have to come on the show, at least as long as he knows about it, that would be pretty
That's
cool.
Right. If you want to dig up our old Elwood City Limits live stream where we just watched Peanut Butter Gamer videos, there you go.
Totally, he's one of the better sources of Arthur video content on YouTube. So definitely check out his stuff. Also, it's officially spooky season. Do you guys have any plans to dress up this year? Are you guys fans of horror movies? If so, do you have any favorites? Thanks, guys, and happy spooky season. Lucas, you're usually the one of the two of us who has a costume ready.
Yeah.
Anything this year?
This is my lazy year, so usually, because I'm so busy with work, usually I kind of go whole hog. One of my favorites was the Mime last year.
Oh, yeah.
This year, doing something a little bit lazy, but it works because it's like a couple's costume. So if you see the both of us, it makes sense. So me and my girlfriend are going as Christopher and Adriana from Sopranos, but it's like Christopher when he's in the neck brace, for all you Sopranos fans out there. So I ordered a neck brace off Amazon. It'll make more sense if I send a picture, Will, after we end up doing it. So listeners, stay tuned for that.
How much does a neck brace cost?
A really crappy Amazon one is about $17.
Oh, okay, that's not that bad. Yeah, I didn't know how much you wanted to commit. I imagine they could run you up a little bit if they're like the good ones, but all right, cool. I'll look forward to seeing that. No costume for me this year. I mean, I don't think so. Sometimes in like the last week, I like cobble together something kind of crappy, but I don't have any plans to do that. I rarely leave my house. Horror movies, of course. Yes, we're both into horror movies. I'll say, let's I'm sure we could fill a whole podcast with like our favorite horror movies and stuff like that. So like, Lucas, is there a horror movie that you've watched recently that you really like?
I'm glad you framed this because I have a recent recommendation. There's a bunch of really good stuff on Criterion Channel right now. Like they have a art house horror section, they have a pre-code horror section. But the one that I've really started digging into is the Hopping Vampires of Hong Kong. So this is one of those rare things, we hear so much about movies, Will, and we've read so much about movies and watched all these video essays that it's very rare that I come across a movie where I had no familiarity with it whatsoever and it like totally blows me away. But these hopping vampire movies, Will, I watched this movie, Mr. Vampire from 1985, and it is everything you could possibly want from a movie. Like, it's hilarious. It's got kung fu fighting. So in Japan, oh my god, in China, okay, the vampire myth is very different, right? Like,
yeah.
It got me thinking about how, our vampire rules, the English vampire rules, they make sense because we're used to them, right? They don't like garlic. They have to be invited into a house. Can't be out in the sunshine. But if you didn't have that context, it all kind of just seems like a bunch of random stuff, right? And so if you want that experience of what that stuff feels like, you watch a Chinese vampire movie. I'm like, okay, I guess this is how these vampire rules work. They have to hop. They can't walk. They have to like hop like a rabbit. The sticky rice repels them. There's all this crazy stuff in these Hong Kong vampire movies. So if you're looking for a place to start, Mr. Vampire is an amazing film, and I cannot recommend it enough.
Mr. Vampire. Okay. Right before October started, I got the chance to rewatch House from 1977. That is a wild time. Definitely recommend you check it out at least once. Like, it may not even be something that you end up liking, but just like see how it strikes you. It's very, very off the wall and strange, and I think everybody should see it at least once, just to see what you think of it. And it is very horror. At least horror adjacent, if not total horror. Thank you again, everybody, for your emails. elwoodcitylimits@gmail.com. I promise I'll check the spam filter more rigidly. And we also want to say thank you to our patrons over at patreon.com/elwoodcitylimits. There have been some changes around Patreon lately, and I noticed one today when I was collecting up our patrons. I see that we have some free subscribers, which is a new thing. Now, these free Patreon subscribers are not getting any of the content that you would get by being a patron, but it seems that it's a way for people to stay abreast of what we're doing, and then if they want to sign up, they can. So welcome and thank you to our free Patreon subscribers, but a more special, specific thank you to patrons who give us a little bit of their hard-earned cash, such as Lily W. Thank you to... I've actually thanked a lot of these people. I'm going all the way down the list here. Thank you to Maria Gisselquist, to Derek Watson Jr., and Alex Koblenz. Thank you to Oscar Vest and Scott Ripley. And thank you to our newest patron, Stanley Fryman. And patrons, don't forget, you have got the latest episode of For the Kids, a PBS Kids podcast, which is available to you. It's Lucas and I talking about Angelina Ballerina. Yes, very appropriate for October, I know. I'll tell you about what's coming up next for November at the end of this episode. So we're talking up here as we get closer to the end of season 18. This is Arthur Reed Super Saver. And this certainly comes at a time in my life when I'm trying to save some money. So I was hoping maybe Arthur had some recommendations here in the cold open. But you know what? He's just got to lord it over me, doesn't he? Arthur finds it so easy to save money, Lucas. You just have to give up. You just have to give up a few things that you don't need. It's fine.
Yeah, I wasn't expecting Arthur's tip to be cut out the avocado toast, but that's kind of what he hits us with. Is like, Arthur's like, yeah, you just got to stop buying AAA video games. And it's like, okay, Arthur, I stopped doing that a long time ago. They're $100 now. I don't know if you've ever checked what a AAA video game plus taxes in Canadian dollars, but it's literally, you're running up above $100 for a new video game, Arthur. So I cut that out a long time ago. Okay, a couple of things. One, no, let's get this out of the way, Will. This is not a sequel to Buster Baxter Cat Saver. I was hoping that this would be a continuation of the Buster Baxter cat saver lore. It is not. He's just talking about saving money. And then 2, it starts off with Arthur acting like it's oh so easy to save money, but then things that he needs start disappearing from his room.
Yes, because, this is the way, isn't it? It's just like, well, what do you not need? Like, all of Arthur's stuff, the objects in his room. Eventually, his house disappears when he's, lording this over us. So I didn't even have to tell Arthur to shut up because the house did it for him. But DW, unfortunately, sticks around with him. He tries to kind of say, I don't need a little sister. And then DW's like, no, you're never getting rid of me. We actually get a rare wah, wah, wah on the soundtrack when he doesn't get rid of her, which is like, we almost think Arthur isn't that type of cartoon. But no cartoon is ever safe from the wah, wah, wah. This episode is about saving money, and it is a little bit on the realistic side here because Dad and Mom Reed are straight up with the kids about how things are a little bit tighter around the Reed household lately, so they need to spend less. This comes from Arthur, who wants the money to buy the Carrot Kid, who is the sidekick of Dark Bunny, which is the first we're hearing of this.
Yeah, and again, I always point this out because this was like one of the weird things in season 1, Arthur, where the 2 episodes would be otherwise unrelated, but there'd be a weird side thing that connects them. Mm-hmm. And the connective tissue between these 2 episodes is food-themed Dark Bunny characters.
Yes, yeah, vegetable even. So we got the Carrot Kid and
wait, vegetable?
Oh, sorry. No, sorry. I was thinking of a yellow vegetable, not a yellow fruit. So fruits and vegetables, not the same thing. Controversial take. Sorry, that was my bad. But you mentioned vegetables, though. Mr. Reed, his catering business is slowing a little. People aren't having as many parties. Mom Reed is saying more people are doing their taxes by themselves at home, so times are tough. DW suggests that Dad Reed not serve turnip and onion burritos because she says they taste like mothballs. Turnip and onion burritos? I'd probably try it.
Yeah, it sounds fire. It's turnip season, with all that we need. Root vegetables. It's turning fall. Sounds great. Also, quick question before we get further in the episode, Will. So what year did this season air again?
2013, 2014, something like that.
Wasn't the economy like doing gangbusters? It's just interesting that they decided to do a capital, the economy episode of Arthur, in the late stages of the Obama years. I feel like by 2013 we had recovered from the housing crisis. This is some 2008 or some 2023 style content. It's funny just to hear them talk about like food insecurity and tightening up your coin purse. It's one of those Arthur episodes that feels more relevant now than it might have been at its initial release.
I'll correct myself. September 2015 is when this aired. So, by this point we are several years after the economic crisis. So it is a bit strange. This did make me have a different thought. You're right. In terms of the environment, the climate of the United States, things weren't as bad as they were several years before this. But this did make me consider the fact that Mom and Dad Reed have had the same job since the show started. Mom is an accountant who works from home, and I forget if she has her own business or like just works from home. I want to say she has her own like business. And Dad Reed is a caterer, and he works from home. I did not realize that until now, that they're basically freelancers, and they somehow own a house and have 3 kids. Like, I'm a freelancer, and I ain't nowhere near house money.
Well, now you're a freelance writer, Will. You're not helping people with their taxes. I feel like a lot more people are utilizing that sort of freelance work. Catering, I don't know the first thing about the catering business, so I couldn't tell you about that.
No, certainly not.
I hear one of the hard parts of freelance work is the whole tax situation. And if there's anybody who knows how to cheat the tax code, it's going to be Mom Reed.
You think she's cooking the books?
Oh my God. that's her whole shtick, right? I feel like if you have the forbidden knowledge, that's what you do, right? You know that Mom Reed, she's got a bank account in the Cayman Islands, another one in Switzerland. She's registered the Reed family household as an LLC so she can get a small business loan that she doesn't have to pay back. She's doing all the tricks.
Man, that's why Dave married Jane in the first place, is because if he's going to get this catering business off the ground, he's got to have some sound financial advice and hopefully get a little bit under the table in terms of money. So man, they got it all figured out. That also probably explains why Mom and Dad are way less whiny about times being tough than I am. Like, if I'm having a bad financial time, everybody knows about it. But they're just like, no, it's okay. Like, it's like work will come back, and until then, we'll just have to go without some things, such as Arthur's action figure. This hits Arthur a little bit, especially because the next day, Mr. Ratburn teaches the class about the Great Depression. And he even has slides to go along with it. And I have to bring this up, and it was a bit shocking to me as well. The slides that he brings up, all of these pictures of the Great Depression are actual photographs of humans.
Oh, true.
What are those people in relation to the Arthur universe?
It's funny, I had a note about this. Wow, this is some real mind-bending animal hierarchy stuff. Because I was just saying, it's kind of harrowing seeing these actual photos of the Great Depression. Feels like one of those classic PBS tie-ins, like when they show... Remember when they showed just an actual clip of Nova on Arthur?
That's true. This is not the first time.
Yeah, so it feels like that, but when you really think about it, the kids are probably like, what animal is that, by the way? Like, they're like, wait a minute. What's up with these guys? Why are their ears not sticking out of the top of their head? Yeah. In the Arthur universe, did the Great Depression kill all the humans? Because we get a dream sequence right after this that's like, it takes place in the Great Depression, and everyone's still an animal. So, I don't know. This is some weird stuff, Will.
Yeah, it really is. Clearly, we're not meant to be thinking about it too hard. And Arthur imagines some of these scenarios with his family, such as we get an imagination of the Reed family in the soup line. DW's upset that it's turnip and onion soup. Or Pal having to drag the family car west, just as horses had to do. So this is very concerning to Arthur, that times being tough means that they are about to enter the poorhouse. So he begins to go to extreme measures to save money. We see this, like a lot of this starts with Arthur turning off the lights, turning off the television. For some reason, when DW's watching Mary Moo Cow, she needs a light shining directly on her face in the middle of the afternoon. She gets mad when Arthur turns out that light, and just like, did you really need that? You're not like reading or anything. Anyway.
Don't you want to feel like a rotisserie chicken while you're watching your stories?
Like you're being interrogated by Mary Moo Cow. But then they jump to more zany ways to save money, such as instead of using a gas mower, because gas costs money, they try cutting the grass with safety scissors, which was funny. That got a laugh out of me. They also have inventive ways, such as instead of using the shower, which water costs money, they soap themselves up and go through the Molina's sprinklers, their next door neighbor's sprinklers, which does some of the job, but still leaves some soap in there to be desired. And the other one that I wrote down here is that instead of using the dishwasher or water to wash the dishes, Arthur gets Pal to lick the dishes clean, which, okay. By the way, I miss, after in the interview that we recently had with Echo is a Band and the about the Arthur meme video, I really miss cute Pal, and there's some cute Pal in this, especially when Arthur is reading by flashlight later, and Pal jumps up on the bed and sleeps at his feet. Just like, we have so much talking Pal that I just miss normal Pal, and it's just very refreshing seeing him be cute. This is where we get the super saver part of this whole thing. So Arthur has a dream that night that specifically DW is the one who is bleeding the family dry. Like, there is a comical pile of bills that are all like DW is demanding that they buy her even more presents, and mom and dad get to put on that really theatrical voice that they do in the kids' imaginations, where it's just like, oh, if only we didn't have to buy so many presents for DW. But in the dream, Arthur is the costume superhero Super Saver with his dog sidekick named Scrimp. So Super Saver vacuums up the bills and then leaves them with a book called 101 Ways to Save Money. And even Super Saver is like, don't let DW bleed you dry, and then flies away.
What I like about this, well, first of all, it's just so ridiculous. Like, bills as a concept are really ephemeral. Like, they have more bills than, like, a human being could conceivably accrue. Like, even if you take it to, like, heat, property taxes, water, power, car insurance, car payment, loan, mortgage. That's still only like 10 or 11 things. There's thousands of bills in this pile. So that's really funny. Also, the fact that Super Saver just kind of sucks them up into a vacuum and that eliminates the debt. I don't think that's how that works.
No, I wish.
Yeah, I know. I was going to say, Will, we could all these days use a visit from Super Saver. It's a good idea for a superhero. Probably more practical than guys like the Punisher. You know what I mean? I don't really need the Punisher in my neighborhood indiscriminately shooting hoods, so to speak. I'd much rather Super Saver just pay off some of my debt. That sounds awesome. That would be like, I'd be like, wow, this is the best superhero ever. We got to put up a statue of this guy going around paying people's debt. So that was just the thought, was like, man, I wish Super Saver was real.
Yeah, seriously, that's the superhero I would look for in the skies. You're absolutely right. So after this dream, Arthur's parents feel that he is beginning to take this a bit too hard. So they reassure him that everything's okay. Like, they're not going to end up, on the soup line or anything like that, but that they can all come up with practical ways to save money. And these can be taken for, those of you at home perhaps as well, such as, instead of using a gas mower, using a push mower, which I was lucky that I had a very small backyard when I was living at home, and so I used a push mower for many years. It is harder work, but it is also easier to clean, and I find it easier to manage. So in some situations, I actually prefer a push mower.
Wow. This is what makes this show so great, Will, is that often we disagree. If I never had to use a push mower again as long as I live, it would be too soon. I hate using those things. So different strokes for different folks.
Fair enough. Like I said, I didn't have a lot of lawn to mow, so I can see that it could get a little bit silly if you're doing like front lawn, back lawn, or if you have like one of those, spacious lawns, the ones that like have their own hills and stuff. And that
lot of incline, not necessarily spacious, but a lot of weird inclines on my parents' lawn.
Ugh. Okay. Yeah. In that case, I totally get it. The use of coupons, of course, and getting vegetables from Buster's community garden, which I'm always glad to see is still a thing. Buster also has a piece of advice that he gives twice in this episode, which is never teach a pig to fish. And he never elaborates on that. It's just Buster kind of being silly.
Right. He says it's because the parents keep saying times are tough, which is what induced this anxiety in Arthur in the first place. And Buster says that's just something parents say, like never teach a pig to fish. So you get the sense that Buster's not actually gleaning the meaning of never teach a pig to fish, which is that, you shouldn't try and force someone to do something they're not good at. You should, focus on their inherent talents. But I think Buster thinks it's literal or something. Like, I think Buster doesn't understand what he's talking about.
Okay, I just figured it was that's not a saying, because I'm trying to glean a meaning from, because I've never teach a pig to fish. To me, it sounds like it almost sounds like negative advice of like, don't teach something that's meant to do one thing how to do something else, or else it'll have one over on you. Like, I don't know.
I think it's like when people say like, oh, people fail at school because you can't teach a fish to climb a tree. It's saying that like you shouldn't if someone's having a tough time with something, it may just be that they're good at other things, and so you shouldn't try and focus on the things that you're not good at. But I guess maybe we don't know. Let's see. Let's see if this exists or if it's something Buster came up with.
But this is also it says like never teach a pig to fish. Not like you can't or you shouldn't. It's just like never. Like that Giant Bomb video. Never.
Okay, so never teach a pig to fish is not a thing, but there is a famous Mark Twain quote, which is never try to teach a pig to sing.
Okay. Is there a meaning behind that one with where you're looking this up? Like, do they supply one?
Teaching a pig to sing is a futile task that abrogates... Let's look up, my favorite source, Urban Dictionary.
Of course.
Usually applied to someone that has a character flaw or an annoying habit they will never change simply because they aren't able to. Okay. The full quote is, never try to teach a pig to sing. It wastes your time and annoys the pig.
Oh, okay. Sure. I get that. All right. And this leads us to the end of the episode where Arthur, after doing a bit of saving, gets enough allowance money to buy the Dark Bunny toy, and his parents give him a little extra because of all the saving he's been helping to do. He goes to the toy store, but on a table outside of the toy store, there is a little boy there with a charity called Families in Need. And Arthur ends up donating his allowance, which is a nice thing to teach. But Arthur, I want you to be a bit more discerning with the charities that you give to. The kid doesn't have a lot of explanation as to what this is. They're just like, we're helping families in need. Anything helps. And I'm like, how? What are you doing? Where is my money going to? Just with all the charities we have that are like, to fund research or like fund initiatives. I'm like, I really want the charities I donate to be very transparent about how the money is being used.
So I like this. Will this kid is like swindling Arthur. The family in need is him, and the need is, only the finest caviar and a fresh Gucci suit.
It's always, there's always the possibility. This kid set up outside the toy store, so if that might not be a scam itself, but he knows what he's doing. He knows exactly where the heat's at. So that's at least a good looking out for that. And we end off the episode with Arthur and DW still showering under the Molina's sprinklers. So they're still doing that. And now a word from us kids. Cassie's third grade class are playing a bartering game, which I think I also did in elementary at one point, maybe 4th or 5th grade. We figured out what bartering was, even though I don't know if I've ever really bartered in my life for goods,
Well, technically we're all bartering, using our Canadian dollars, and I think that's what this is trying to explain is the basics of supply and demand. And with that being said, I never did this in elementary school, but I think this is actually a really interesting exercise. I was like, what a useful teaching tool, because, you know as well as I will that sometimes economics could get a little cerebral and a little bit obtuse, that makes it hard for us common folk to understand. And so I thought this was a really engaging way to introduce the concept to these elementary school students. I was like, they all have villages and they gotta trade with each other. Seems like a fun way to learn, which is not usually something I come away from these a word from us kids thinking. So
no, totally. It's there's 4 groups and they're all given different goods. So sheep, chickens, wood, water, and they have to trade, and they're given different scenarios. So winter is coming, or in one case later, that's your water, it's you lose some of your water because it's infested with bugs, and there's a little girl who looks really upset that happened. It's one step away from Settlers of Catan, which is how you would build up to this. It's just if you had 7th graders or something, then's a good time to start playing Catan. I really liked how they showed a trade happening. I forget exactly what the trade was for, but one side got way better than the other one, and the side that got hosed had a kid saying directly to camera, That was not a fair trade. We are not happy.
Well, they say a true compromise, Will, is when no one's happy. So those kids definitely got the short end of that bill.
Yeah, for sure.
Supporting this podcast is how it keeps going, and it's very easy to do. So here's how you can do that. If you're listening to this show and want to get the full back catalog of Elwood City Limits and all of its sister shows and offshoots, you can listen on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google, and even more services. You can also go to our YouTube page, youtube.com/Elwood City Limits, for the full back catalog. If we aren't on a service you use, please let us know. You can interact with us on social media. We're on Twitter @ECL Podcast, Instagram @Elwood City Limits, and twitch.tv/Elwood City Limits Pod for our occasional streams. We're also on Facebook and Tumblr. Feel free to reach out to us on social media, or you can email us, and your email might be read on the show, elwoodcitylimits@gmail.com. Finally, for exclusive content including entire side series like For the Kids, a PBS Kids podcast, and ECL Origins, subscribe to us for as little as $1 a month at patreon.com/Elwood City Limits. That's all for now. Thanks a lot for listening, and now back to the show.
And just an episode after our Tibble expert was here, we get another Tibble episode with Tibbles to the rescue. So, yes, I said earlier, vegetable, yeah, totally wrong. I was thinking of corn for some reason, but no. The cold open of this is Dark Bunny chasing down the villain Bananamanoman. And it is a large anthropomorphic banana that uses banana peels to with one eyeball that trips up Dark Bunny with banana peels. Dark Bunny, once it was introduced many seasons ago, and the joke is that it's like Batman the Animated Series. He is a Batman character. I found that the Dark Bunny style doesn't translate as well to this new format. I feel like he moves a bit more stiffly than he did when it was hand-drawn. And it just looks like, it's like if you tried, if you ever played the Arkham games, they have the skin where you can be Batman from the animated series, but Batman from the animated series is never meant to move as fluidly as a video game, and it just kind of looks weird. Looks like wrong somehow.
Well, so, also, it's, the thing that the Flash animation is less good at doing is sometimes they can get a little bit lazy with the framing, right? And they look like puppets on a stage, and the camera's just kind of like in this Dark Bunny interaction, we're kind of going to reverse shot with Dark Bunny and then the banana, and then a shot of a more zoomed out shot of Dark Bunny talking to the gorilla with a banana. And the old Dark Bunny segments in the hand-drawn era, they were trying to replicate as you know, Will, the great animation of Batman the Animated Series, which is so stylish. And one of the things that is so stylish about it is that it's almost impressionistic, right? The camera is always at these really weird angles, kind of these like Dutch angles to emphasize the drama of everything. There's always these kind of dramatic shadows. So it's not just the movement of the animation, it's, camera placement, things are less cinematic, that sort of thing. I will say, though, Bananamanoman, throwaway
Bananamanoman.
Bananamanoman. B-Man, as I call him.
B-Man.
By and large, the throwaway character of the week. Easily. I love this guy. I want to see more from him. I don't know what it is about him that I'm so taken by, but I never thought of a one-eyed banana with arms and legs before. He's great. He looks great. I wish he was a running character. And also, this ends up being a nightmare, like a Tibbles. We get the kind of a nightmare in the figment of the Tibbles imagination. The final fate of the Banana Man is pretty morbid, actually, what ends up happening to him. I was like, what? Damn, yeah. Dark Bunny did him dirty. Dark Bunny takes out Banana Man basically is about to get eaten by a gorilla.
Because they're at the zoo.
Yeah, they're at the zoo. And Dark Bunny saves him, and then Banana Man pledges to help Dark Bunny forevermore and fight crime. He's gonna forego his criminal lifestyle, and then Dark Bunny takes out a shrink ray and shrinks him and has him on his utility belt. And that's like, I don't know, something kind of sad about that. I don't know why it's so off-putting to me,
especially considering that Bananamanoman was like surrendering. He was like, I promise I won't be evil anymore. And then Dark Bunny's like, well, blah, blammo with the shrink ray. It's like, damn, man, you can't just let him live the way he's meant to. This unholy banana man of man. So this, like you said, turns out to be a dream by the Tibbles, who wake up at the same time. They're like the McManus brothers. They both like start awake and they have their new purpose. It's a dream by the Tibbles, but then this turns out to be a dream because they find themselves, much like Bananamanoman, latched onto DW's belt, and then that turns out to be a dream.
This is even more frightening. Yeah, classic dream within a dream fake out. But this is just, I don't know, maybe it's the idea of being really small that's freaking me out about all this. But something about it is just not right.
So they are imagining themselves as tiny and in DW's control. This episode has to do with DW is playing with Emily, and the Tibbles are in a nearby tree getting ready to throw water balloons at them. But then they start arguing, and DW has a wagon of stuffed animals that she has under the tree, and the Tibbles fall, and they fall onto the stuffed animals. So DW inadvertently saves them. They both throw water balloons at her, but then they start to feel kind of strange. They feel like that wasn't so much fun anymore. And in fact, after this, they are bedridden at home in the middle of the afternoon because they're beginning to develop empathy. And I just love that empathy registers in the Tibbles like a sickness. They like don't understand what it means to feel bad for someone, and so they think that they're sick. I think that's a very good bit. These malevolent little children. So after talking with Mrs. Tibble, they decide that they need to pay back DW for rescuing them, which essentially means following her around and looking for opportunities that may be dangerous. But every time they try to help her or save her, they end up either hurting or inconveniencing her, much to DW's continuing frustration. Like, they follow her around. I noticed here, they spy on her in an ice cream shop. She's with Emily, and what I'm guessing is Emily's babysitter. But this character looks a bit different. It's either one of our favorite side characters, Marie-Hélène. So either Marie-Hélène colored her hair, or she got fired by Emily's parents, and this is a new au pair. So I don't know.
I'm glad that Marie-Hélène is back. That's all I have to say about this.
If that is her, I want to hear from her. I don't just want to see her. Well, why did she dye her hair if that is her? We see Visita. Visita actually gets a couple of lines here. She is serving what looks to be lemonade to DW, but it's green, and the Tibbles think that it's poison. But it actually turns out to be an avocado and banana smoothie, which is good because I was looking at this and I was like, okay, so it's not lemonade, but it's green and it's like kind of like thick. And I'm like, is it supposed to be like that? If this is like another type of juice? I was trying to think of like green juice, but avocado and banana smoothie, totally fine. In fact, good. Very good for you. I did laugh. There's a moment where the Tibbles are disguised in the sandbox and they're just like pretending to just completely be covered by sand, and then their eyes pop out and they save DW from something. So DW is getting incredibly frustrated. The Tibbles aren't getting it, and Emily tells them straight up to just leave DW alone. That's the best thing they can do. They're back in bed at home, and Mrs. Tibble is, again, kind of sort of giving them advice. She doesn't really know what's going on. But she mentions that something that seems to apply, where a time that she was making croquembouche. And I had to look this up because I was like, because, of course, there's like the croque monsieur, which is a sandwich, but I'd never heard of this before. And we do see it later. She talks about making croquembouche, which is a French dessert of pastry puffs that are piled into a cone and bound together with threads of caramel.
Oh, I've seen these before in like cartoons and stuff and like in movies, but I've never known what it was called. And I've certainly never had it in real life, but this thing looks divine.
Sure. No, it sounds really good. And Mrs. Tibble says that it was like really difficult to make the first time, but it was worth it. So the Tibbles decide to go for a difficult ploy here. They devise a new plan to rescue DW. The plan is that while DW is at the playground, they're going to put her Mary Moo Cow doll at the top of the big kid monkey bars. We see a montage of them devising traps. Speaking, Saw X is in theaters, and this is at least a little adjacent here. They put traps all around the monkey bars so that DW can't get to it, and they will be the ones to save her Mary Moo Cow doll. They do this also while disguised as Mom Reed, but their disguise is interesting. is definitely of interest because it's one on top of the other's shoulders. They have like a blanket kind of covering their bodies. They've painted a bucket to vaguely resemble Mom Reed and the top half of her head, and then put like a mop on top of it to resemble hair. And then they both speak at the same time, which is like, I don't know what kind of effect they're going for here. It is pretty funny. And they even say like, "Hi, DW, it's your mom, Mrs. Reed."
Them both speaking at the same time. We're recording this, Will, on Friday the 13th, so I'm ready for chills and thrills and scares and all that jazz. And I think this was our Friday the 13th fright right here. There's something really creepy about them talking at the same, them like harmonizing their speech.
Yeah, it's a real like Mecha Shiva thing. So it was funny, but also like, especially with their weird like Google like big eyes, it is creepy. Also here, DW makes explicit reference. She brought along a couple of her stuffed animals to keep guard, including Sharky. We haven't seen Sharky since the first season.
Yeah, listen, I'm happy to hear from Sharky. A million times better than whatever Bud's friggin' dinosaur is called. Sharky, a legendary first season episode of Arthur.
Again, it's just really cool that the creators were still thinking of this stuff. They were drawing back on old Arthur canon, so I was very pleasantly surprised here. DW easily circumvents this whole thing. She walks around the traps and uses like a rake that she's supposed to step on to get Mary Moo Cow. The Tibbles get very upset about this, but they end up getting themselves trapped by hanging onto the big kid monkey bars, and are saved by DW again because they land on Sharky, which now, again, DW is still they are still in DW's seeming debt, so she's never going to be free of them. So the episode ends with the Tibbles coming to her house. They give DW a croquembouche, and again, sorry for that pronunciation, even I don't like that, and they promise not to bother her for a week. But DW instead says, only a week, and they have a food fight instead. She starts a food fight with them, so that's what she'd prefer them to be doing. And this was also interesting because I was picturing like a croquembouche to be like bigger than this. When they said like French pastries, I was thinking, what do you call them? Macarons or something, like something that size piled on top of each other.
So they are bigger than that, though. That's kind of like an error on the animation. Like, I'm looking at pictures of croquembouche on Google Images, and it's exactly as you predicted. They're like Ferrero Rocher sized, Will.
Yeah.
So I was actually just going to make a note that the croquembouche that the Tibbles give DW is weirdly small.
And when they're throwing it, it almost sounds like it was like, it's weirdly like hard and dinky. It almost sounds like it looks like they made it out of like corn pops or something, which could be interesting, but it's not exactly what I was picturing. All right, that's our Arthur episode for today. Let's go on back here. Arthur Reed Super Saver, Lucas. What did you think of this one?
It's funny, this episode is pretty after school, especially like it's pretty straightforward with its moral and trying to educate kids about what parents mean when they're stressed out by money. And usually we're pretty critical of those episodes because one of the things that we always praise Arthur for is kind of avoiding that kind of after-school special style moralizing and taking a more nuanced take with educating kids about different morals. That being said, as straightforward as this episode is, I weirdly really enjoyed it. Like, I maybe it's because something like the economy has so much gravity to it. Like, it's a pretty serious topic. And so it was interesting to watch. It was interesting to watch Arthur kind of try and tackle it with brevity, despite having pictures of the actual Great Depression and starving people in soup lines. So I weirdly enjoyed it, and I was, you know, it has the benefit of nothing's ever too dire for Arthur and his family. Like, you can tell by Arthur and his family's house that they're pretty upper middle class. So the economy is never touching them that roughly. It would be maybe interesting if we ever tackle this subject again to see how some of the other kids' household would deal with a similar situation. Because as we always talk about, you know, Buster, for instance, lives in a single-parent household and he lives in an apartment. Francine has to share a room with her sister because they live in an apartment. So they're obviously in different socioeconomic strata than the Reed family. So it would be interesting to see how, you know, penny pinching and that kind of practices, how it would look different for families with different economic backgrounds. All that being said, I weirdly enjoyed this episode. And the dream sequence with both dream sequences, the one with Super Saver, the ones where the Reed family's in the soup kitchen because and it's all because of DW and her overspending. That stuff was pretty funny.
I agree. I liked this too. Maybe even a little bit more than you did. I know what you mean when talking about like the more like, as you said, after school special episodes of Arthur. I felt like this didn't quite get to that, and I also think that it's quite novel to have a children's show talk about finances, because that is something that is potentially something that your audience can begin to get their head around. And I think it is important to let kids know where, like, how things happen. It can be hard to kind of picture that stuff as a young child. So, you know, it's not completely going to take, but I think it is good to know and to have the parents be like, yeah, sometimes we're not doing as well as other times, but we're still okay. Obviously this would be different if we had it from a different character's perspective, like Buster and his mom, who, you know, Bitsy has like a desk job as a reporter. So pretty stable employment there, you know, within the notoriously stable journalism industry, but they live in an apartment, so their reality looks different from Arthur's, who looks different from somebody who might be on the lower end of the financial spectrum. So I thought this was a neat way to look at it. I did think a lot of it was quite funny, and I did enjoy that. And yeah, I was taken by how kind of novel this was in terms of the types of issues that Arthur tackles, and it was done in a very positive and non-stressful way, which I liked. Yeah, Tibbles to the rescue. A little bit heavy on the Tibbles this season. Usually one and I'm good, but this was all right. You know, I didn't love it or anything, but it's an interesting idea. I think I really am enamored with the whole thing of like the Tibbles getting sick because they're realizing that making people feel bad makes them feel bad. And I think that's the high point of the episode for me. It did get to be a little bit like just all about the kind of gags and setups, which, you know, we're fine. But yeah, it's I got my laugh, I got my yucks out of this, and it was fine. I think that I don't have quite the reaction to Tibble stories as I do to others, because we often end up learning a bit more about them than we even think that we will. And this was another case of like, oh, okay, they are just slower at developing empathy for other people than other kids, which at least they're learning it at all. They're not turning out to be like little psychopaths or something.
Yeah, I pretty much agree with you. I thought it was a little bit more scattershot, not necessarily in a bad way. It doesn't really add up to a cohesive whole, but the bits are good. Really solid bits. I will say that for me, the high points of the episode are kind of the bookends, right? The opening with Dark Bunny and could you say his name again, Will? Because it's so weird. Bananamanoman? Is that what it is?
Yeah, you got it. Bananamanoman. Bananamanoman.
Yeah, now entered in the Throwaway Character Hall of Fame, and then the weird, you know, Dream Within a Dream and the Tibbles being tiny, to the pretty much the great kind of ending sequence where the Tibbles are pretending to be Mrs. Reed, and they're holding Mary Moo Cow hostage. All that stuff is great. So bookended by these two great sequences, and kind of a little bit all over the place in between, but not unenjoyable or poorly executed.
Well, Lucas, it's great to have you back for Elwood City Limits. Of course, we all wish you best of travels as you continue on your way. Couple things here as we end off this episode. I mentioned earlier about Patreon a couple of times, patreon.com/Elwood City Limits. Beginning of November, after spooky season, we're going to be having our next episode of For the Kids, a PBS Kids podcast, because we did double on ECL Origins, so we're doing double on this one too before we end off the year. And one of the titles that we have been requested for a couple of times, there's a couple of shows left that were given multiple recommendations. I think this one looks quite interesting. It's one that I have no experience with. Lucas, I don't know about you. It is a very recent show. We're going to be talking about Let's Go Luna, which has... as I'm to understand it, I've only done a cursory look at it so far, but there's a bit of a Nickelodeon connection to this one, so I'm really interested to find out more and to take a look at it, because I think, Angelina Ballerina, if you listen to the episode, we at the end of it, we're just like, all right, maybe not so British next time, and this is definitely coming in more American.
Listen, I gotta say, if you folks don't subscribe to the Patreon, I actually think the Angelina Ballerina episode of For the Kids is the best one we've done in a while. It was pretty. I'm laughing just even thinking about it. I was, as they say, on some other ish that day. So I recommend you looking at listening. Listen, that was definitely one where it was like, this is behind the paywall, so we're gonna really let loose on old Angelina Ballerina. So high recommend, and excited to check out Let's Go Luna.
Yeah, we were in a silly, goofy mood that day, and I think it translated to a really fun episode. So you can check that out for as little as $1 a month, and you've got Let's Go Luna coming up in a couple of weeks' time from now. I also want to mention I am going to be guesting on a podcast Sunday, October 15th. I believe it is going to be premiering live on YouTube, and you'll be able to check it out after in audio and video form. The podcast is called Trivial Debates. I'll be putting stuff up about it on on our social media this weekend, and I'll let you know when the YouTube link is out there. It's going to be me on camera talking about horror movies. So Trivial Debates, I'll be on the episode coming up on Sunday, October 15th. If you're listening on the Patreon, get ready for that on Sunday. If you're listening on the free feed, this is already out, so we have probably put the link on social media. Go ahead and find it and check it out. I'm really excited to do that. And then next time on Elwood City Limits, as we creep closer to the end of Season 18, we're going to be talking about the pageant pickle and some assembly required. So wherever you are in the Halloween season, we hope you're enjoying it. We hope that you're watching horror movies or, doing... There's lots of other stuff. Why can't I think of other stuff to do during making cookies? Halloween
Bobbing
cookies?
for apples, Will.
Do people really bob for apples anymore, though? Seems kind of unsanitary. Have you ever bobbed for apples?
I think once when I was a kid. Listen, surely someone out there is... Listen, if you're bobbing for apples, let us know. Elwood City Limits, the email address.
At gmail.com.
At gmail.com. Someone's got to be bobbing for apples.
Sure. I would like to hear that, actually. But thanks a lot for joining us. We'll be back with you very soon. My name is Will Young, and for Lucas Mancini...
Don't worry. Luckily, I'm fluent in Gorilla Sign Language.
We'll see you next time.